a strategy. So we're here to kind of get your input, kind of see what we can do together to start kind of moving forward with those recommendations and actually putting them into practice. So hopefully we'll have a good discussion today and kind of start things off. They've been doing a lot of data collection, really kind of doing a deep dive into the city, you know, with data in the city, with economics, housing, income, all those different things, and really kind of going in at a deep level with really getting a good clear picture of City of Fort Myers, kind of focusing on some of the major corridors in the city, MLK obviously, Palm Beach, Colonial, and really taking a good look at 41, a really good look at those corridors, those commercial corridors, and the economic health of those corridors, and also the relationship with the communities that surround those corridors. So you have the commercial corridors, but then behind those you have the residential areas as well, and how they interact with each other and how they impact each other. And you know, they're tied together with each other. They're really not independent. They're tied together, as you all probably know. So you know, it's taking a look at all of those and how do we improve those commercial corridors, and how do we improve the living standards of those communities, and what's the interrelationship there. So looking forward to hear what Dr. Murray has to say and present to the group, and really getting your input as well. So I appreciate your patience. We'll be getting started shortly, so we won't keep you any longer than we have to, but really appreciate y'all being here. And hopefully, as we kind of get started in this, you know, we really want your input. I mean, we need everybody's help on this. This isn't just something that the city of Fort Myers is doing, or this isn't just something that the FIU is doing. We're all working on this together, and we're going to need everybody's help on this from the community to kind of move forward and really do some real tangible things here to help the community. So that's kind of where we're at right now, is just kind of a high overview. So hopefully when Steve gets here, he'll give you a little bit more depth and detail on things, and also with Dr. Murray is some of his information and findings that he'll be presenting as well. So just be patient, we'll be getting started shortly.
Steve is on his out parking.
Okay, I'll go drag him in. Thanks, everybody.
To a meeting, my first time ever. Thank you guys for coming out. I don't know if you all want to introduce yourselves or what you want to do here. It's kind of a free form. We want to have a discussion. The doctor's going to get in here. The reason I'm talking now is because once these PhDs start talking, they never stop, okay? I want us to have a conversation. I don't want him to just go on and on like I'm doing right now. So why don't you guys go get these donuts I just paid $100 of taxpayer money for. If you don't eat these damn things, Phyllis has got to eat them, and she's not going to do that. Mr. Ford, we'll start with you. Did I say go?
Yeah, if everybody could sign in, we have a sign-in sheet. And then we'll start here. And again, my name is Steve Belden, Community Development Director, City of Fort Myers. In the back here, Steve Weathers, our Economic Development Director, who brought you all the goodies.
Phyllis is.
What's that?
Phyllis is right.
At Phyllis's recommendation. Dr. Ned Murray with Florida International University, and I'll let him introduce his assistant. If we could real quick, it's a small group, if we go real quick around and just do a quick introduction of everybody, and then we'll get started if we could start here.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Dr. Shadrika McIntosh. I'm a pharmacy owner here in Dunbar, right down the street on MLK. So's a Wellness Pharmacy. I forgot to say that. Good morning, my name is Shannon Harris, and I'm a registered nurse with the Department of Health.
Dan, I'm going to this office with Impact Partners.
Greetings, I'm Sean Collier, Fort Myers CRA.
Good morning, I'm Melanie Long with the City of Fort Myers CRA.
Good morning, I'm Sean Smith with the Boston Red Sox.
Good morning, everyone. Michelle Hilton Terry, Fort Myers CRA.
Good morning, I'm Natalie Collins, Career Sources Southwest Florida Supervisor for Fort Myers Center.
Good morning, Peggy Elmore, President CEO of Career Source Southwest Florida.
Good morning, Jennifer Rodriguez, Lee County Economic Development Office.
And again, Steve Weathers with the City of Fort Myers Economic Development.
Laura Schmidt. I'm a new resident of Fort Myers.
Doug Hefner with the Small Business Development Center of Florida Gulf Coast.
My name's Todd Rauschenberger. I'm the Business Development Strategic Planner for PFA Architects.
And I'm Mark Miloff with the Greater Fort Myers Chamber of Commerce.
Naftali Feliciano, CEO for Cancer Alliance Network.
Lee Ford, Southwest Florida Impact Partners.
All right, thank you everybody for being here. With that, I'm gonna turn it over to Ned, let him get started. Oh, I'm sorry.
And Phyllis Calloway, our host.
Yeah, we have one gentleman up front. Yeah, he's with me.
Oh, hi, Alan
Okay.
Huffar, Research Coordinator at the Metropolitan Center.
Okay, I'll turn it over to Ned.
Oh, wait, now I'll let Victoria introduce herself.
Victoria Level, Research Specialist at Fayette Metropolitan Center.
So we have our two staff here from the Metropolitan Center. I'm Ned Murray. I'm the Associate Director of the George Perez Metropolitan Center at FIU. I know some of you and for some time now, and it's enjoyable day to meet the rest of you, and hopefully we can continue to work together. Phyllis, thank you so much for hosting us. This is fantastic. Perfect location, perfect room, and everything, all the things that go with it. I'm going to be brief about the background. I'll get right into it. I think many of you know, I guess we go back just before, where did Steve go? Just before COVID, we started a community economic development plan and completed a community economic development plan after post-COVID. So it's a very interesting period, of course, as you all know, trying to do a plan for the city within its corridors during a time that was very, very stressful for everybody. We're very pleased with the plan. Of course, the plan went before a number of different bodies over the period of time, so there's a lot of input into that. We had a lot of Zoom meetings like we're having now, because obviously we couldn't have the meetings that we'd love to have like this, and hopefully we'll be able to do this from now on. And in the end, I think we had something that I think had a lot of consensus behind it, a lot of support for. And so once the plan was done, because it does get into a lot of community economic development, strategic planning work, which isn't the easiest thing to do, as we all know, because you get down into the level of where people live and work, and the opportunities that we need to figure out are there for folks, and then all the other things that have to happen. You know, where does the city come in? Where does the CRA come in? Where do the institutions come in? All absolutely critical in order to have a successful community economic development plan. So that's where we're at right now. Steve have asked us to come back. We've been working, of course, with John Talmadge very closely over the years. I've known John for many, many years. And he's been very helpful and supportive, of course, through his office, and I know he's very busy as is Steve Belden and Steve Weathers with everything going on post-Ian. We were supposed to have, by the way, this meeting was supposed to have been held the day of Hurricane Ian, if you recall. Needless to say, that meeting was rescheduled, and a lot has happened since then. I'm just driving around last night, and I just can't believe what's going on around here. I mean, the I-75 corridor in particular. I mean, I wasn't here that long ago, and to see what's happening, and so quickly after the hurricane, but obviously that's part of the reason why we're seeing a lot of this activity. So really, really interesting. So we really got to get to it now, and we're all together right now. Should be sitting down like this, because we'll all have to be part of this. We really do. Community, like I said, community economic development plan don't get done unless we have champions on the ground. We're going to do everything we can. We're going to give you every resource, every piece of data, every bit of best practice, all the things that we know, and we know the city pretty well, and we know the region pretty well, its economy, and so we want to be a resource, but we want to be an active partner too. I mean, we're prepared because we've been around a long time ourselves, over 25 years, doing this kind of work, mainly on the other side, you know, in Broward, Miami-Dade, Palm Beach, we've been down the Keys, doing similar kind of work over the years. Of course, the big issue now over there is housing, and I'm sure it's probably becoming an issue over here. Actually, we started to hear about that towards the tail end of this plan, even before, you know, the craziness that happened over the last 2 years in terms of the housing market. So we're well aware of that. In fact, we're doing a 10-year affordable housing master plan right now for Broward County, where nobody wants to talk about the data anymore, they want to talk about solutions. So we're kind of beyond that. Same here too. I mean, we're going to share some data, but data only, I mean, we have a lot of data, that very updated data we could share with you. We're just going to highlight a few that I think are important relative to our conversation, okay? Because we need to be mindful of particularly the most current data since Ian, right? And we can track a lot of that, because a lot of data isn't always updated on a quarterly or monthly basis, but and we can use that and later that, but we're going to be tracking very closely is your employment data since Ian, okay? And so we'll talk a little bit more about that. And of course, where's the economic activity coming from post-Ian? So really, all really important things. So we're going to get right, this isn't a long presentation because what we're going to have at the end, we have 3 slides that deal specifically with the issues that relative to implementation. We're going to present those like as talking points because these are the issues or the talking points that we need to figure out. We need to have dialogue about it because we're not going to be able to implement any of these issues, topics, whatever we want to refer to them as, unless we work through these talking points and which essentially challenges in anything we do, whether it be small business development, whether it be workforce development, and whether it be trying to create some kind of infrastructure in terms of entrepreneurial activity like you have here in terms of accelerators, startups, and whatever it may be that works best here. I mean, because obviously there's a lot of activity in other areas, but it has to be what works best for, in this case, the MLK corridor. We're going to do this again in the Palm Beach corridor and perhaps maybe another, but we really need to be focused on this corridor, which was part of the plan itself. So with that, these were the focus areas, as I just sort of referred to, within the Community Economic Development Plan. What we're continuing to do at the Metropolitan Center is take care of that first one a lot. We identified both the target industries, but also what we showed as your real opportunities within your advanced industry sector in particular. Who's here in the city? Who's here in the county? Where's that growth happening? Who are the businesses that represent those industries? Okay, really important to know that, what their needs are in terms of worker skills, knowledge, all that. So that's a lot that we can always provide. We'll continue to provide as part of the plan. Feed that to you, okay? The second one, small business growth. Obviously, we have the ability to track a lot of that right down to the addresses. But this is going to be a big issue in terms of the types of program activities we put into place. You know, how tailored they're going to be. Nothing can be generic when you do really authentic community economic development work. But, you know, it has to be tailored to the specific needs and opportunities, in this case, of the MLK corridor of Fort Myers. Same goes with workforce development. And you all know these things much better than we do. I mean, we have a lot of experience doing these things, but not specific to Fort Myers. And that's why all of us here today need to be part of that discussion in terms of, once again, how does that workforce development activity and program activity get tailored and formalized to, once again, the need and the businesses here in the MLK corridor, and the same with accelerators. I mean, there are all types of accelerators, incubators, but once again, these are just big terms unless we know exactly what we're doing here on the MLK corridor. Next. On the target industry part of it, once again, here's what the Metropolitan Center is doing right now, and we'll provide all this to you. We already have an inventory. We have data that comes out on a quarterly basis of every industry, every business, I should say, by industry, by address, by what product or services that they put out. The most recent data just happened to come out the third quarter of last year. So we're gonna be able to capture what was happening on the ground around the time of Ian. And then when the fourth quarter data comes out next month, we'll be able to see what that impact was. And then we'll be able to track that on a quarterly basis to see how we're recovering. And who's recovering and who's missing, right? So it's gonna be really interesting. Like I said, we can track that right down to the address. So this is a lot of the activity that we're doing on our end that we'll continue to share with you in any way, shape, or form. The small business growth, okay? Once again, using that data, we can drill down to the corridor. We want to see who's here now, who was here prior to Ian. We definitely want to see where the activity is going. We want to learn more about these businesses, and I'm sure some of those businesses are already represented, and we need to be more represented as we go through this process. Phyllis and her work here and others can tell us a lot about the entrepreneurial activity that's occurring right now, where the gaps are, what the credit needs are. We want to work closely with Small Business Development Center. We have a very active one at FIU who does a lot of work in the community, where your client base exists, and where the gaps are relative to that as well. Really important. We've had these same discussions in Miami and in other places, so it's great to have you here. Thank you. And then, well, as I say there, we really need to figure this out. And then what we proposed in the plan, and the term we used was an economic opportunity mobilization fund, which has been used in other parts of the country to help with that gap for startups, and because we know that a lot of small businesses that don't have the financial wherewithal, a real hard time breaking in and getting beyond that first year or two of business life. So really important that we talk about that. That's going to be a really critical part of the success of this whole implementation plan. If we can do that, then that's going to be, not only will it help with this, but it's going to help with the workforce development piece and also everything that Phyllis and businesses are doing here at the center. Next. Once again, this is a collaboration type of thing. This is an area that I've always had a real interest in, but I've also had a lot of concerns about, because the way, and I think you all know this, the way workforce development programs are typically funded, administered, not just here but around the country, they're not as targeted and formalized as they should be. But the more we know about our businesses and the more we know about our workers, the better we can tailor them and formalize them. And that takes some work. I'm sure a lot of that's being done now, but we really need to comprehend that and tie that to the businesses, the growth. Where's the growth occurring, whether it be in healthcare, whether it be in some manufacturing base. We're finding manufacturing growing, probably growing here too, but certainly growing in Miami-Dade and some other places. A lot of it because of COVID, supply chain issues that came about as a result of that. So we really need to be able to identify those skills, link a lot of that knowledge and training to the businesses. That's why it's going to be so important to know who these businesses are and what their demands are relative to knowledge and skills. And then there's just a lot of things we can do in terms of coursework. Let me give you a good example. I'm sure that many of you are familiar with the Homestead Air Force Base, which basically has not really been much of a base since Hurricane Andrew, but it has come back, and we are working right now with the base. We're working with the county and other entities, including the South Dade Economic Development Council, which is people like yourself, and a South Florida Manufacturing Task Force to create manufacturing jobs in county-owned land around the base. Okay, And guess who's providing a lot of the program and designing the courses? Miami-Dade College, which is located right in Homestead. And they're providing coursework on aerospace manufacturing parts and product, which is a big deal. I'm sure it's a big deal here. You've got a major airport here. So there's manufacturing subsectors that are really starting to open up. Medical instruments is another one, and you have them here. So we need to take a look at that because those are really big opportunities. Next. And then this accelerator system, we're calling that, and whatever we're gonna end up calling it in the end, the bottom line is, it's what is being done here at the Enterprise Center and what needs to be done, what more can we do, you know, to assist Phyllis and her operation, and maybe even other locations, smaller locations, to be able to get this kind of thing done. And in the end, it's gonna come down to, we know the locations, we know that so we have the geography, we have a good idea of who the businesses are, where the growth opportunities are, and then in the end, like everything else, it's gonna come down to seed capital, right? And the more we have a business plan for this, the easier it's going to be for us to do the ask, you know, in terms of capital, right? But it's going to be hard. That's always the big, difficult thing. But you have to have something to sell, right? You have to have a product to sell. And that's hopefully what we can develop. Okay, here's just a few data points that we want to share with you, just to get everyone up to date on what's happening. When we were here back in, I guess we started in 2019, Steve, you were already exploding. I mean, you were one of the fastest growing counties and metropolitan areas in the whole state. And you can see what's happening since COVID. You still continue. Look at the Lee County and Fort Myers. And just talking to Steve Bell a few minutes ago, he's almost surprised just driving around how you come back so fast. And it's just exploding so quickly, both at the county level, which is the green, and the purple being the city, even more so, double the county. You know, this is really remarkable, really remarkable. So we'll see what happens. They'll probably, when we get to the 2022 census, we'll probably see something. But I would imagine probably not a whole, it would be a blip. But I think what we're going to see is those lines just continuing upwards. And I guess in some ways that's a good thing. In other ways, obviously, it's something that we need to be concerned about, because growth can get ahead of us, and that creates problems as well. So depends on the question of what kind of growth. We have to make sure that our business growth, economic opportunities are there to withstand the other development growth that's occurring, which is also going to drive up real estate costs, whether it be in commercial space, whether it be in residential properties. So we have to be mindful of all those things. Where does this, what is it that we're trying to do fit into that level of growth and development that we're seeing? Median income, we're still obviously not a county overall. Obviously Lee County at 63,000 household median income, much higher than Fort Myers, but even at 63,000, you know, we're not where you'd expect us to be probably in another year or two. This does not take into account, obviously, the activity we're seeing post the end. So expect those to go up. And the question then becomes, especially in Fort Myers, which is what we're talking about, right? How does that 51,000 go up? Because if that can go up, that means maybe we're doing something right here in the MLK corridor. So those numbers are only good if they are representative of the population and neighborhoods that we're working in. So something that we need to track. Because obviously the opportunities are going to be there. But a lot of those opportunities are on the I-75 corridor. Next. You still have, this has been updated. This is what they call an inflow, outflow. I think some of you have seen this before, where our workers live and where they come from and where they go every morning. And you can see by this, we have 24,000 workers here in Fort Myers that leave every morning. They leave Fort Myers. But yet we have almost 60,000 that come in to take jobs here, mainly in tourism and hospitality, of course, retail. And of the jobs that are here, only 8,300 people live and work here. So we need to improve that. We need to create jobs in the corridor so that people who are leaving, those 24,000, can stay here and create opportunities, businesses, and work here close to where they live and all that kind of thing. So I think that's going to be a real goal of ours. Next. Here's where people go. So that was in 2020. So they're leaving, and that's, oh no, I'm sorry, workers live. I get this back. So these are the people coming in. Okay. So most of the people coming in, interestingly, well, that's that 8,300, yeah. Cape Coral, which is interesting. So obviously a lot of people coming here from Cape Coral. That's probably a lot of healthcare, I would imagine. Yeah, makes sense. Lehigh Acres, of course, North Fort Myers. Then you got a lot of other locations. Look at the one, 27,000 of them coming in from who knows where. Broward County. We know this. Alligator Alley is getting busier each morning and evening now. Next slide. And this is where workers are employed. So here's where they're going. So obviously, everywhere once again, and all other locations. So they're going pretty far. Obviously, a number of them in Lee County, but a lot of them are going much further. So they're going up to Charlotte, they're going down to Collier, they're going wherever they're going. That's a long commute, especially having come in on I-75. I can't imagine what that is every day. Next. Okay, so when we did the study 3 years ago, we did want to focus in on those advanced industries. Who was here? You can tell by just comparing Lee County and Fort Myers, they're one and the same. So you do have the industries and the occupations represented both in Lee County and the city. The problem, of course, in the city, you don't have as much of a critical mass that you would like. So, but we know that they're here. We know that these industries are here, and they're employing a good amount of workers, and you can see those earnings for the most part are pretty darn good. So these are the ones that we do want to be able to focus in on, and we're prepared to work with you in talking to these businesses, interviewing them, get a better sense of what their needs are, what their gross projections are, all the things that hopefully can help us land some of these types of businesses or complementary businesses to the corridor and begin to grow in these sectors. Because we want to grow in, obviously, sectors that pay a lot better wages than, obviously, leisure and hospitality and retail and those kind of jobs. Next. These are your business characteristics. This is always important to remember, and this is a lot of times, the economic development officials sometimes think in terms of businesses that come in and create a lot of jobs. Well, the reality is most of our businesses are they're micro. They're either, most of them are 1 to 4 and certainly no greater than 5 to 10. So these are precisely the types of businesses we're talking about, right, Phil? We're here, 1 to 4, and this is where your real entrepreneurial activity takes place. And it's oftentimes, once you get things going, and we've seen this on the other coast, you can get a lot of activity, a lot of entrepreneurial activity, but the success rate, as you all know, after a couple of years, once they've spent their family savings and everything else, that's it. So we've got to make sure that knowing that this is who we are, how do we work to make sure that they're successful? That means capital, but it means a lot of other things, you know, that are happening right here in the enterprise center. And a lot of other things I've been talking about in terms of small business development and workforce development. Next. So, we also want to look at where the business formations are happening relative to the county. And you can see here, obviously, the most would be at the county level, Lee County, and Fort Myers right next to it. And then, of course, you get into Cape Coral. So we are seeing a good amount of activity out there right through 2022. The question is, you know, how is this going to look after Ian? And I think we have a slide coming up. Go ahead. Is this one? Yeah, this is the one. So these numbers are coming from the quarterly census for employment and wages. It's data that institutions like ours can get from the state on a quarterly basis. And this data, by the way, comes right down to the address. So we can determine what industries are growing, okay, and obviously which ones are obviously been hurt by the hurricane. So you can see here, as of September, which was the last reporting date, September of last year, third quarter 2022, this is where most of your industries were based upon employment, okay? Now, what we're gonna see is in another month, that's month by sometime, yeah. We'll be able to put this side by side. We can put this side by side and see what the impacts were. And then we can do some different levels of analysis. We can drill down to the MLK corridor. We could do different levels of analysis. And really, that would get really, really interesting in terms of who's growing, who we've lost, and like I said, what are some of the things that we need to be focused on.
What does the number of quarterly establishments mean?
It's the number. It's the number of establishments by quarter.
Oh, that are reporting?
Yes,
Yeah.
that quarter.
Yeah, that quarter.
Okay,
Third
so
quarter of 2022.
1,465 businesses are reporting 27,890 employees at $532 a week.
Average.
Average.
Yeah, yep, you got it.
Yeah, well, that's something like that too, right? But that's to be expected, you know. But it's going to be interesting on a sector by sector basis to see. I mean, we know leisure and hospitality is always going to come back, but you can see what the wages are. Right? We'd like to see some of these others to see where they're headed relative to that. It's hard to even anticipate right now because, and what the fourth quarter will tell us is only the impact, the initial impact of Ian. It's really going to be the subsequent quarters to see how we recover on a quarter by quarter basis. But this is going to be really interesting, and to be able to do it right down to the MLK corridor is going to be really fascinating.
And does that make up like 75% of Lee County employment? For like 120,000 jobs, and that's like 100,000?
Yeah.
It's significant. I don't know the exact percentage, but restaurants and other eating places, that's a huge portion of the
Yeah.
So it looks like maybe 25% of our employment is able to afford to live here?
That's only going to get worse. Yeah, that's something we have to track. Yeah, we can't ignore that. You know, this wasn't something that we foresaw 3 years ago. We knew the problem was growing, just like we did on the other side, on the Atlantic side, but nobody anticipated what was going to happen in the last 2 years. This investor frenzy that just completely altered the residential real estate market. and we have to address that. And it's only those cities and counties that do that are gonna be able to address a lot of these other issues. Because you can't, increase wages by 4 or 5% and housing costs go up 30%. So, it's something that, it's not specific to what we're here for right now, but because we're doing this all over South Florida, essentially, we're even in Coral Gables. Coral Gables is worried about affordable housing. You know why? Only for one reason, it's they're losing population. And they don't want to lose population. That doesn't look good. And they're under 50,000 now, and guess what? They're going to continue to go under 50,000 unless they start creating at least mixed income housing. So, and we're seeing this over and over and over.
But I guess my question and curiosity is, are you guys honing in on the categories that are at least $1,200, building equipment, contractor and above? I mean, focusing on growing restaurants probably isn't.
Yeah. And it goes back to that slide with the advanced industries and target industries. We want to know who they are. I mean, it's one thing to target, what to call an industry, a target industry or advanced industry. No, we need to know specifically who is that business that is a targeted or advanced industry business. Because then we can hone in on not only who they are, but what their skill sets are, what their knowledge base is, what their markets are. Another important thing in terms of clusters, of course, as you know, is complementary and supporting industries, because if they're growing, they need complementary and supporting industries to serve them. So we need to know all that kind of thing too. I recall one time sitting down with a CEO of a semiconductor company, and I remember asking him, why here? Why did you locate here? He said, well, I went into the building, the space looked good, went for a walk, I found a printer down the street. And I said, that makes sense. With the space, I got the printer, we need printers. That's all it took, was to have that one printer establishment located near his semiconductor firm that made it work. I mean, it's funny how these things work out. Next. And this is not to be unexpected. The state puts out an 8-year projection every year. And the latest one is to 2029 of where the growth is going to occur. Well, their data typically is going to just show what is, and they're making their projections based upon the existing economic base, right? They're not going to, unless they can see some enormous shift in terms of industries and things like that, they're going to pretty much go with what's already here. And you can see in that far right column, it's back to essentially the types of industries and jobs that we're trying to play down a bit and hopefully raise other ones. Certainly, there's going to be opportunities and for growth in software. You see software there, an increase of 28%. Aircraft, mechanics, and service technicians. So there you go, similar to what we're seeing in Miami-Dade. So it's all these layers of data that are informing us. So when we have these conversations with businesses, we can, we have some questions that we can ask and try to work with these sectors and the specific or the individual businesses that represent them. These are the skills in greatest demand as of 2022. You can see customer and client support, basic customer service by and large, the leading skill demand. I can tell you, because we just went through this discussion yesterday on a study we're actually creating at the Metropolitan Center a resiliency index. And we're looking at, this is one of the data points that we're looking at. But you can see here just by, it not only does it tell you where the greatest demand is, but who's posting that. So it gives you an idea of what sectors, but also what types of business that doing jobs postings. So we can do a deeper dive into that. Right?
Dr. Murray, can I interrupt you for a second?
Yeah.
My boss is here.
Hello.
That's the, well, God, but the mayor, he's close second. Mayor Anderson's here, and he stopped by to say hi and kind of welcome everybody and kind of let you know what we're doing with MLK and
Good morning.
let you know that the leadership is behind this.
Great.
This is, thank you all for coming out here today, because this is big. This is good stuff. You know, for years, we've talked about doing things along this corridor, and now I think this is just what we need to get us going, and it's a good roadmap. No pun intended. It's a good roadmap for the future of this corridor, which is vital not only to our city, but to the region as well. So thank you all very much.
Thank you for coming. Appreciate it. And here are the hiring skill sets based upon the top employers, so no surprise, Lee Health, #1 by far. And then of course the other institutions, Florida Gulf Coast University, then we get into some more healthcare. Obviously healthcare is a critical sector here and a growing sector, and we need to talk about what does that mean from not only a business standpoint, but also in terms of the worker skills and where the opportunities might be in terms of wages and other things. So we knew that 3 years ago when we were here, but this is obviously critical, and we've seen it in many other areas of the state we go. This is a vital sector to not only our economy, but to our way of life, our quality of life, and we need to make sure that the growth of the healthcare sector, it really is in harmony with what we're trying to accomplish on a corridor basis as well. And there's a lot of opportunities there that we need to look into and have those discussions.
Where does the school district lie?
Somewhere else.
It's
Probably right under
Lee Health and the school district both employ about 10,000 employees each. What this is job postings, and so the school district may not be posting in the traditional markets.
Okay.
Okay, as I mentioned at the outset, I've got several slides that are more like talking points that kind of wrap up a lot of things that I talked about. But before we get into those 3 slides, which is it, here's what we view as the next steps. Some of them are already underway. Real opportunity today for all of us to come together and talk about who's going to be a part of this process going forward. We need champions on the ground to do this. We'll do whatever we can from our end. We'll continue to come over here and meet and interview anytime that we feel there's an opportunity to do that, and we're welcome to do that. But we really need to do that right away. And if there's a specific topic, whether it be workforce, small business, or building some kind of entrepreneurial accelerator system, or maybe there's even a crossover, because they are related. All 3 of them are related, and we need to be thinking about these in perhaps a more integrated kind of way. So we need to know who the individuals are, but we also need to know who the institutional partners are. We had a very good conversation with Florida Gulf Coast several weeks ago. Obviously, Lee County, John Talmadge has been supportive of this. Healthcare, who the individuals there that we should be talking to and have here representing the hospital. Then we'll need to have working committees and timelines set up on those individual topics. Once again, we'll facilitate all of that, okay, help you do that. And of course, best practice, we continue to do this because we're doing it in many other locations, but provide you with a lot of these ideas, this best practice that is occurring. And not to say that best practice is something that's easily replicable in every area, but there's always something in the best practice that maybe fits into what we're trying to do, or at least gives us some ideas. And then lastly is, like as I said, all this data that, especially this current data that comes out that is proprietary, we'll continue to share that with you as part of the project. So with that, let's get into these three areas of discussion.
Oh, I was just wondering, the CRA is about to embark on doing a plan for MLK. And so I was just wondering if you'd be willing to work with them. I mean, redundancy is ridiculous, and you know, we want to look at all the existing plans or whatever's going on. And so the CRA hasn't approved this yet, but the selected consultant is Bernie Peters, and so I will make sure.
Fantastic.
Yeah. And the other thing, are you going to make the slides available?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's already off, it's everything we do.
All right, thanks.
And to piggyback your point about redundancy, I went to a town hall, maybe some of you guys have been to these. The county's been doing the town halls about the $1.1 billion that's coming from housing and urban development from the government to Lee County.
Wow,
Yeah, just it's the largest amount of money that I've learned. Largest amount of money ever awarded to a county.
I've never heard of that.
Only states have ever been awarded $1 billion. But with that, 70% of it is towards housing, and I think family of four average income like $66,000. So your point a couple slides ago, I forget you said Broward County, I forget what it was, about people leaving certain areas because they don't have housing. So that may be something to chat about, to see some of that information. And also another big takeaway that I had was the potential need for education of the workforce. So looking at different ways to recover from the storm, it's not just in areas that you would traditionally think that would need to.
Right.
And also about diversification other than just the tourism industry.
Right. Yeah, all excellent points. And yeah, anything to do with the housing part. I didn't realize that. I thought it was coming in from EDA or EPA, some combination. That's all HUD.
Yeah, there's still a few, maybe 4 or 5 town halls left.
Yeah.
There was one last night.
There was 3 last night.
3 last night? Okay. So maybe they're almost done with it now. But it was valuable to learn that.
They got one slated.
Well, just gonna add to that a little bit on that 1.1 billion. So that 70% is actually, it's a little bit confusing because the 70% is actually targeting to low, moderate income areas.
Right.
It's not directly 70% for housing.
Okay.
Probably at least half of it will go to housing, but there's not a set number. We're anticipating next Monday on the 15th, the Federal Register will come out, and that will specify exactly those dollars. We're anticipating it's all going to go to the county, and then the county will work with local governments on how those, all this is leading up to creating that action plan, but that Federal Register will kind of lay out how that money is going to be kind of distributed. But it is restricted to 70% of low, moderate income areas, which City of Fort Myers is a large part of that. So we expect to get a good chunk of that money for the city.
And Steve, HUD does allow for economic development.
Yes. All of that will go towards infrastructure, housing, economic development.
And workforce development.
Yes.
Education.
That's right.
Don't forget us, yeah.
Around that, so I didn't see any demographic data related to levels of education. So what percentage of those that live here have what level of education? I know like Cast and MC provide. Yeah, I'm just curious.
You still have that slide on another?
Yes, I could look for it.
Okay, you can look it up while we're talking.
And then the other
Yeah,
piece.
we have all this data. That was one not Victoria had.
That's okay.
I didn't want to like overrun, but that's
an important one.
and that's going to be changing a lot.
Yeah, in terms of where you want to go in terms of salaries, and then the other one is the diversity. I know you talk about gender diversity, but I think looking at where workers have been left out and where that education or upskilling or reskilling you just talked about would come from. I think that's also important to the conversation.
Amen.
And you could say that.
And it's when we talk about gentrification, we always think about it in terms of certain neighborhoods or districts, but it can happen on a larger scale too, and people get left behind as an area takes off, like Lee County has taken off. There there is just always some neighborhood, that's why I'm glad HUD is doing that, because there are always gonna be neighborhoods that get overlooked.
Yeah.
Unless we do what we're talking about today.
Yeah.
It's just, it's a certainty. You've seen it happen over and over again. Okay,
So Ned, real quick,
Yeah.
so while she's looking for that, one of the things you guys are not aware of, city manager had a meeting last Friday with all the directors, and we kind of went through with our grant writer to kind of throw in what's all this stuff in the kitchen sink for this 1.1 billion that is needed here, housing, education, all these things. On Monday, today's Wednesday, right? On Monday, we had a meeting with a grant writer for EDA money, which is separate federal grants, to talk about some of the same things, but also, for example, funds to come in and maybe double or expand this accelerator program here, workforce. So really what we're really trying to do right now is put as much or as many requests as we can for the variety of things that we can over time. So if you have a thought, an idea, hey, what about this, you miss, or is anything being done, not to put it on Belden, so put it on Steve Weathers. You can always send me a note. I can find out if we're doing something, and if we're not, should we be doing it? Let's say we weren't doing anything on affordable housing. Oops, maybe we should. We weren't doing anything on workforce, healthcare, whatever it is. So we're just trying to gather input and ideas, and that's the idea to me of a stakeholder meeting. Hey, give your input. There's no bad ideas. Maybe we're covering that base, maybe we're not, but I want to make sure in the end I can go back to my boss and all my other bosses and say, hey, we're covering all our bases, and this is community input, not just the staff doing it. Okay? Thank you. Sorry, Ned.
Good point. You're always at an advantage when it comes to infusion of federal money to have something in place like this. So let's take advantage of the fact that we have a plan, we have implementation strategies, we know what we want. Maybe we'll add some more ideas as the morning continues, but you've heard that term shovel ready. Well, I think we're shovel ready here. So let's make sure that we use this opportunity when the funds come in, that we can do a lot of things that we're talking about here today, including housing, but also some of the capital that's going to be needed for small business and workforce development.
Thank you. Oh. You see? Yep, thank you.
Yeah, there you have it. Let me see how those compare. Well, I mean, by the way, when we did the original study, we did benchmark the city and the county against other cities and counties in Florida, particularly on the Gulf Coast, from Sarasota down to Naples. Then I think we used West Palm Beach and a few others. And you were behind at that point. I'd have to go back and look at that on a number of different levels. Certainly, we talked about income, but on educational attainment as well. So here you've got 29% of your population, 30% of your population, well, in Fort Myers with a bachelor's degree or higher. That it's not too bad, but if you were to then segment that out in terms of sub-geographies, where we are here now, those numbers would go way, way down. So we have to be mindful of that. So obviously educational attainment is really, really important. Having some college because we know now that a lot of the skills don't necessarily need a bachelor's degree. It's always nice to have one, but we also need to make sure that DOC one, that 14.8%, that's the one we want to get rid of. We want that to go down because there's just so many other things that we can do in terms of equivalency and community colleges, and well, I guess they're all basically four-year colleges now, but I think that's another whole part of what we're talking about here is the educational levels that we need to make sure that for those 15%, which are probably all located very close by, there's opportunities there, which also gets into, on another level, are the career changes that we need to be focused on. And I don't know how much we're doing that, Phyllis and elsewhere, but obviously that's a big part of it too, is career changes. If you've been in one sector for all your life, and that's where all your education, that's where all your skills are, can you move over into, say, another sector that provides greater opportunities? So we need to be able to provide those opportunities as well.
And then, I don't remember what the kind of charts are called, but like when you overlap the population of the city of Fort Myers is this. They have on average this level of education,
Yeah.
and these jobs are the ones that pay over $1,000 a week. And so that's what we need to be going for, and then creating where are the gaps with the population that we can micro-credential. I guess we have a new FGCU president that's big into a bunch of certifications and other elements along with future makers.
Right.
So do we fully understand, like, hey, 50% of our population, if we had this work with a little bit of education, would obtain that level of income?
Yeah, those are precisely the kinds of questions that we need to be able to show. We have a lot of that mapping from the original study. We're gonna need to update a lot of that though, because that was 2019. So here we are in 2022. I'm trying to think, and we can talk about it. These are Alex and Victoria, the data experts, the data crunchers, but in terms of how we would maybe overlap different data.
Maybe you can get with future makers with the collaboratory, because they do a ton of studying and then they do a bunch of micro credentialing around that. Like maybe they have some data points that can overlap with your data.
It'd be great if they want to contribute. We've invited them. Nobody's here from the collaboratory. We've reached out to them, and hopefully they'll be part, because I know they do a lot of work at this level. They worked with us on the original plan that we did.
Maybe they can just give you the data.
Yeah, absolutely. Sharing of data is really important. But we do have a lot of it. I mean, we have our in-house GIS capacity is really, really good. So if there's a data question, a mapping question, you just let us know, and we can do that. But if the collaboratory, especially if they have primary data, it's the primary data that's really, really important to get.
I don't know what that means.
Huh?
What does that mean?
Maybe they collect it themselves.
Yeah.
Right, you know, relying on
In the
third
field,
party.
surveys, and field work, stuff like that.
So one of the things that CareerSource does is we publish a target occupation list that use those projections through 2029.
Yeah.
And we're looking for a minimum wage threshold with a certain threshold for growth.
Okay.
And then we tie that to training programs in our region that have successful outcomes. And those are the programs we fund. Those are the ones that we pay the tuition for. So the data is absolutely already out there.
So do you then report on the types of, because to me that leads to the type of business startups that should be focused also.
It could tie to the business.
So
Focus.
if you're preparing people, like it's a lot easier for me as a business owner to then start businesses that have potential, because it's hard to find employees.
John Talmadge is on my speed dial. We talk every day.
Yeah. But you report on, hey, we're training on this for these type of businesses?
We do have that data, we don't report out, but we use, so businesses can impact the target occupation list. It opens up 4 times a year for us to make changes to it. So we use the state data, but we can also augment it with, if a business writes a letter, for instance, nursing assistants comes on and off the list based on wage thresholds. And so now the wages have gone up for a nursing assistant, so we get a letter from Lee Health. Even though the state may say they don't see the data yet, Lee Health can write a letter saying we are now paying this for our nursing assistants, so we can get that added back to the list.
That's that primary data type of thing.
That's great. We need to be talking. You're sticking with us, right?
Yes.
For the next, how many months? All right.
And the only other observation off of that conversation is the emerging technologies that disrupt those projections, and then the impact that has on the region. So especially as you're trying to get into those higher level salaries, if we're not paying attention to the indicators that aren't those leading.
Agreed.
Yeah, I know that's in terms of where businesses should go, it likely needs to be thinking about that.
Okay, so as I mentioned, for the 3 main topics, we put together, I think, some of the talking points that we can really begin to engage in. You could almost look at these as like the fundamentals, right, in terms of how we continue this dialogue and what we need to get done over the next several months. So we talked a little bit about this, but when we start to develop programs in terms of workforce development, you know, once again, we need to figure out, working with the industries, the sectors themselves and the businesses, you know, what kinds of programs, make sure that those are tailored. And this does work. I've seen it work, you know, all over the country. I was in a part of the country that did a lot of plastics manufacturing. That was, in fact, the leading center for plastics manufacturing in the whole country. And what they did is they, in trying to get those skills out there, which were really, really high, because plastics, as you know, today is pretty high end. It's medical instruments, it's electronics, it's, you know, it's a lot of different things. It's not just, you know, this plastic bottle. And so what some of the manufacturers did is they went into the vocational schools in the neighborhoods and actually brought in their equipment. And so the students were able to learn on these, we learned CAD/CAM, computer numerical machinery, and walked right out of the voc school into a job back then making, you know, $50,000–$60,000 a year without just a voc education. And I'm talking like 30 years ago now. So that was a lot of money back then. But there were so many different things once you can align yourself with like the other example I gave you was Homestead's manufacturing, aeronautics manufacturers coupling with Miami-Dade College. You know, those types of things, and it's all done on an individual basis though. So we need to identify those businesses here, and then the programs that are set up here in the corridor and whatever. So it's very connected. And that could be in a range. It doesn't have to be just one sector, but what are the leading ones? What are the ones we want to identify? Where are the opportunities there? And it doesn't always have to be, it's not just necessarily manufacturing. Manufacturing is an example. If there's opportunities there, we definitely want to jump on it, but certainly we looked at the leading sectors here, healthcare and others. We need to make sure that we're making those tie-ins.
And then that's one of the things that we identified right post Hurricane Ian, which is why we have the pre-construction class with the masonry group. Yeah. And they come in and set up a classroom where we are graduating these folks out and placing them in jobs immediately post-graduation.
Yeah, yeah. And I've seen this play out in Miami, and where there's a lot of filming that takes place, you know, post-production filming. I was noticing all these post-production companies were opening up just in the area of Little Haiti, basically. And I had to ask him the same question, go out and talk to them. It's amazing when you can find, oh, you talk to these people. He said, well, we located here because Miami-Dade College, the other campus near them, had courses in, guess what, post-production. So these kids were coming to Miami-Dade College and getting jobs in post-production right away. I mean, but it takes, you have to go target.
You have to target it, exactly.
So essentially all these things, and I think the model is the second bullet here is really what we're looking at is, maybe model is not even the right word, but we do have to create something that's very clear, very operational between the business sector and what you're doing here or what they may be doing at Florida Gulf Coast or wherever they may be.
That's a good point, because a lot of the classes have to be practicum and not theory. Right. Because that's why folks are not going to college. They got the 12-year education and they've been theorized for 12 years. Now they want the practicum side so they can get the hands-on training.
Yeah, and I can tell you in my years of doing this, which has always been one of my big frustrations is workforce development, is you've got to have it in the neighborhood. It can't be too far off. I mean, it can be a few miles, but it's what you're doing here in the end. This is the ideal world for doing these types of things. And Fort Myers, I know is the only city that has something like this that we've worked in at least. So that's fantastic. And I mentioned earlier the career shift stuff. I don't know how much you're running into this. We were running a program, not to us directly, but we were working with the Beacon Council over in Langley on a urban workforce program that they actually had taken as a model from Michigan, Detroit, which got into a lot of this fourth issue was the career shifts and the difficulty it was for them. I forget the name of it, urban something. For the workers to be able to, because they needed their full-time jobs, because they have families, they have transportation issues, they have childcare. How do we make that happen? Because sometimes we do things like this, and then we find out later, oh wow, the students or the workers, the adults are falling out, leaving the program, or wonder why. So these are all things that I'm sure we're going to have to figure out as well. Did you have another question?
Yeah, I'm just sort of curious, as we talked about like the average age is around 40, and we talked a little bit about the upskilling and reskilling and making those changes for adult learners and some of the challenges. And when you, on an earlier slide, I noticed that Hodges wasn't listed as a university for partnering. I'm just curious, because that's who their target population is, correct? So I'm just curious why they weren't listed or included.
School development?
Hodges University, their target population is adult learners.
I'm not familiar.
Yeah, Hodges University is a local university. Their main, I only know this because I live there. Their main focus is adult learning, not so much four-year degree, but I'll say more, I don't know if certification is the right thing, or job track nursing programs, things like that. They're actually setting up a big entrepreneurial program they wanted me to kind of be aware of, because what they want to do is be able to say, hey, attracting businesses is good, but a long process. Retaining and growing is fun, but we've lost a lot. Are there people here that want to start their own business? You know, whether it's in restaurant or service or something else. So they're kind of setting up this whole thing more as a, I'll call it a career university versus more of a traditional academic, I got a diploma university. Okay. So I can send you, Dad, I can send you a note, get you introduced.
Is one of their board members, so I'll have to say.
And actually, Hodges just launched, partnered with one of the big truck driving schools to bring that to this community, because the average, once they complete the 6-week program, is $65,000 a year. So Hodges is definitely going in that direction.
That's interesting. Thank you, Michelle.
And Fleet Force is the trucking.
Fleet Force, yes.
Yeah, trucking company, and they've just added a new component that for truck drivers, for non-English speaking people. So I'm interested to see how that one plays out, because one of the challenges is having them pass a CDL test if they don't speak English. So they're right on the mark, yeah.
And a good significant amount of the students at Hodges are non-English speaking or English as a second language students.
What is the language that they're focusing on?
Sorry?
Spanish. Spanish?
That's a great resource then.
Laboratory said they would have, but there's only one, so.
They couldn't make it work here. We tried. We tried.
So these are the main talking points relative to workforce. Is there anything else you want to talk about relative to this? I mean, we can always circle back, but I just want to get to the other two, which would be small business development and this only works, you know, small business development only works if you do have an intermediary on the ground. And I don't know if that could be the CRA, potentially, and then maybe do some of that right now, or maybe I always hate to create something new sometimes when you already have agencies on the ground, but to be able to be there to provide for what's going to have to happen here, and that is the creation of the fund. So you do need people with skills, management skills, and who know the community, know development, know the businesses who can do that. And we're talking capital, and the kind of capital that just doesn't exist with the small business development. So could you talk a little bit more about your client base? We work very closely with our SBDC and at FIU, and what they've told me over the year to us is their typical client is a client that is already established and needs some financial lending, but is already in a position where they could probably qualify. Is that pretty much what your client is?
Actually, working here with Phyllis, because I office out of here, we're working with more startups. People coming in, husband and wife or one or the other, that just have an idea and they want to sit down. They don't know how to go about doing it. And a lot of my responsibilities is to get them to write a business plan to say, hey, how are you going to do this?
Yeah.
And most of them, they're so, in fact, I read one last night that, we took a person at 11 o'clock today. I mean, things that he wants to do, he's got a list of like 30 things that he wants to do. And, small business to start out trying to do 30 things, well, is not realistic. So, it's getting them to focus in on what they really want to do as a business and where they want to take it. Some ideas come in and they're really, really interesting and great ideas. And boy, there's some on the other side of the spectrum. But, you try and guide them in the right way. Now, some of our consultants down here that work out of Florida Gulf Coast do work with more seasoned clients that are looking for, funding and whatever so they can get to the next level. And so we do any and all of the above, but I really like seeing the small business get going, but it's finding funding for them. Because a lot of times these people don't have money.
So you're providing small business technical assistance.
Correct.
And that's happening right here.
That's
So
happening right
you're bringing you're delivering that.
That's
And that's fantastic. But then the question is,
There's also both SBDC and Southwest Florida Empire Partners in partnership with the CRA are a first phase of what you're talking about through the ARPA funds. So they've done close to 100 applications and approvals with over $1.5 million of grants already granted to small businesses. So they are in the first phase of tracking some of that. It's the next funding cycle that I think you're talking about, right?
and maybe some of this HUD money. I mean, we need capital for the types of lending activity, the gaps, in the finances. Because you're providing the technical assistance, you're not providing loans. Right.
But
So-
Dan, could you also speak to, in the MLK plan, and we've funded Impact Partners for that Dunbar Development Fund. Can you speak to that and share some of that information?
Yeah, absolutely. So Southwest Florida Empire Partners has a fund, and the collaboratory is also assisting with standing up a $40 million county or 5-county line. But there's about $2 million that we should have funded, hopefully by the end of the year, to invest in a pairing of small businesses and real estate investments in the CRA. That could be paired with, and our hope is to leverage those dollars with bank funding as well. So that, I think the infrastructure is in this room for that and to act as an intermediary. And then Phyllis has the space that they're getting the training and additional technical and first phase kind of startup.
That's fantastic. But do we have the lending programs? We don't have the lending programs in place right now for who we're talking about, right? Those who are coming in without any kind of equity or.
So I think what we've tried to do through the Impact Partners is to create the fund that folks can apply to.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so if we did small business funding, we would fund alongside banks. And so our conversation has been, hey, if we act as the equity portion of the fund, kind of the bridge component for groups that don't have the equity so that they can meet the requirements and reduce the liability of the banks.
Right.
So we have 2 or 3 banks that will be kind of a leverage component to the fund. That's the intent for
That's
the
a great
small
intent.
business. And then we would use the systems within the small business lending in the banks
Yeah.
as our underwrite and execution.
Well, we need to ramp this up and see what obstacles we run into with that. Is it gonna be more equity, is it gonna be more technical, probably a combination of things, right? To make sure that they're successful, and they have the needs that, some of the basic needs in terms of running a business, right? I mean, like you said, you can't be everything, but, a lot of fundamentals in terms of financial bookkeeping and all the things.
I'm sure we could use some expansion of grant soft funding to go alongside the equity that requires a return in the capital stack.
So is that something, you're still working with, you said that are these community banks or bigger banks?
Yeah, no, they're community banks.
Community bank.
Well, the investments are coming from bigger banks. The expectation is the underwrites for the small businesses will be leveraged through the community banks.
We're, back in the day, this community had what was called a banking consortium.
Yeah.
That was putting together, they shared in the support of the minority businesses and a community development here called Velasco Village. That's how those houses got built, that's what the funds came from to do it. And I've been throwing it out there to them, and they seem to have some interest in trying to get that going again. They just don't know who's gonna manage it, because it takes a lot of work. Well, no, it was Charles Idelson was the manager of the consortium back then, through SunTrust Bank. That's what he was. I think now he's with UC. But somebody has to take the helm of that administratively in order for that to work. But they seem to be very interested in doing that again, and that would be a great help to the community. And the fund that he's talking about that we started, as he said, I don't want to repeat what he said, but basically that's one other tool. And the other thing, like right now, I have nearly 200 businesses that we are personally working with here with Phyllis. We work together on a lot of these things. And what we're finding isn't the grant program will help you if you've been in business a few years. We have a lot of bright people here who just want to start a business. And we need a fund to help them. If they got a good plan and they got a good idea and you feel that it could work, you should be able to let them have a few dollars to help them get to where they want to go or need to go. And that's been missing for a whole lot of years. I mean, there used to be a CDC lead code that was ran by Roy Kennings here, who used to have that $5,000 grant money that they give to a small startup. We need something like that again today, right now, because we got the people out here. I mean, it's amazing to me how many we really do have. Because I tell you, I work with them right here, just as a whole, and they're very enthusiastic, passionate about what they're doing, and I think if there's any way we can support them a little to get to one level to the next, this community would be very well positively impacted by their success in doing that.
That's fantastic.
I think some other parts of it are some of the slides that you brought up, like childcare and some of the other elements of that to free these people to be able to go and work their 8-hour day unencumbered with kids.
Yeah, so cost prohibitive these days.
So I was waiting till you guys finish this discussion. Yeah, so I will say that, I'm glad to hear this conversation because I don't, I'm not always in these circles. But I will share that I was a benefactor of something like what this discussion is along that line. Through the collaboratory, there's an impact investment program, which is our community foundation here. So I was able to get a loan that I wouldn't have been able to walk into a business, a traditional bank and get, because they ran us through a program to basically de-risk, that investment. And so paying back that loan allows another business to probably, or a few businesses to come in and benefit the same way in getting their businesses up and started. So, you know, as a testament, these types of things are necessary. I had, you know, advanced level education, but I did not have the business experience, of starting that business. So it helps along the whole spectrum. So I'm happy to hear the collaboration that you guys are.
So it sounds like we've got the infrastructure.
Well, we collaborated with Yankers Global to do that because we didn't have an avenue for the post-incubator to get them out. So with Impact Investing, if we introduce them at the beginning of the incubator when they first come in, they have the opportunity to grow with the skills that it takes, because it's not an easy, she can testify that it's not easy to get that money. You have to be able to work toward it. And it's our job here in the incubator to identify the skills that's needed, the tools and resources needed to develop them, not only the business side, but the business owner, to be able to graduate to that level to get the funding.
So we're looking at more than, we're using the word accelerator, of course there's a difference there. We're really talking incubator.
Yes. Yes.
Steve, I guess that's, and I know we've gone back and forth, but now that I'm hearing what you're doing and the types of businesses and startups you're talking about, we are really talking incubator types of programs, and the infrastructure required, and the funding that's going to be required to do that. But boy, you certainly had pieces in place. I mean, so I guess what we need to do now is identify, because now we've got the basic infrastructure and all the mines that need to be in place and all the actors, all the stakeholders. We need to be thinking in terms of program development, right? So it seems like we've got to continue, okay, how do we take it to another level, right, in terms of program development? And then when we do that, essentially creating our own business plan, so to speak, and what we're going to need in terms of capital, right, to do all that.
Well,
Does that make sense?
Todd and I were talking earlier, and Phyllis and I have had many conversations on this, that we have kind of as a clearinghouse for these businesses, you know, write a business plan, or they come in 2 weeks later and say, do you have my money?
Yeah,
Well, you know, here's my business plan.
Right.
And, you know, if they're not gonna work for it, then they're probably not gonna work on their business, so.
Well, if you're gonna do an ask, I mean, you all know, I mean, you've gotta have something in place, and we've got something in place to work with, and I think we should have to maybe develop programmatically a little bit more, and then deliver. And if you've already got some lenders who are committed to this, these are not bank CRAs, these are smaller community lenders for the most part.
I also wanted to mention, and we have a relationship with Catalyst Community Capital, and they administer and underwrite our revolving loan for housing. We're also talking about doing something for businesses along Cleveland. CRA got to hear about it just a little bit. So we will be bringing that full program to them, and that will provide capital in the form of a loan.
So we will need to identify our capital resources as part of our program development. Wow, let's run with this. So I think we're getting a better sense of that. So maybe when we get to the last slide, this ecosystem that Steve and I have been talking about now for several years, I think you've got the fundamentals in place. We got the geography. I think we have a pretty good sense of what industries, particularly in terms of wages and opportunities, that we want to be able to target. Looks like we have some investment money, or at least resources that are there. The question now is you're already in place, Phyllis, so it's not like you need that money, but I'm sure there's ongoing operating costs.
Exactly, that is our biggest holdback right now is staffing, funding, because we can't provide the appropriate staff to do the assessments that's needed. So with funding, the incubator program, this is a gold mine
Yeah.
here in the city of Fort Myers, and sometimes I don't think the powers that be really understand what they've developed here.
Right.
Because with the enhancement of it now, we are offering so many different programs that not only enhance the businesses in the community with Southwest Florida Impact Partners, we have other resources that come in, SBDC, the Masonry Group, the NCCER. We have all of these folks that's interested in growing the facility, but again, we have to have appropriate staff to do that, and staff needs to be paid.
Yeah, yes. So do you submit an annual budget to the city?
I do, and it covers the operating costs, nothing extra for but what we do have is a foundation where we are just at the point where we can start writing grants because we needed to be established the way we are now for at least a full 2 years. We're coming up on that 2 years. And we can now start writing grants and seeking sponsorships with the foundation to support additional expenses for the incubator program.
Well, what's your annual budget right now?
$671,000.
That doesn't seem.
No,
close.
sir, that is not even.
What can we do about that, Steve?
Nothing.
Well, yeah, we need to find, and also like to your foundation, there's some opportunity there. But I think if this now becomes part, which it is, and I think it should be, the city's implementation plan, we really need to be thinking about what's going to take to cover those costs. Like I said, you need skilled people. Who actually owns the facility itself?
The city of Fort Myers.
They don't charge you for that?
No, there is a 99-year lease here.
Oh. So they cover the insurance and all that?
They do. The city of Fort Myers cover all of the general operational costs with salaries as well for the 3 people that we have here now, as well as the utilities and basic CAM, community association management stuff. But at the same time, it's like pulling teeth, and I'm not undermining the city at all, but it's like pulling teeth because we're out here, and I don't think anyone has vested the interest to come out and see the needs. I mean, this building was built in 2009, and there are doors that won't close, and facility maintenance, we have to come out of pocket and get our own vendors to take care of these things. And yes, I'm airing my dirty laundry because I'm in a room of people that care and can help.
Now, it seems like a really huge facility.
It is, and it was scoped for another building that we are hoping through another program that we're working with now to actually get that building built. Because like Mr. Ford said, we're at full capacity right now. I have 1 office space available, but I have a waiting list of 17 new businesses that's ready to come in, but I have no space. So we created the virtual leases for them to be able to come in and get the training and go through the curriculum for them. But we need additional space as well.
What percent would you say, I'm sure you know, all of your small businesses are from the corridor area?
I'm going to say it is only maybe 15–20%.
Okay, so what do we need to do there?
We need to be able to bring them, we need to venture out in the community to make sure they understand what the program is all about. I think the facility has been here so long, and there's been different things happening out at the facility, but we need to bring them in and show them what we're doing. And through that actually is holding programs, holding meetings like this to get their integration. We have their buy-in because the community really supports us. If we have events, the community is here, but we need their buy-in. And we need to be able to present them with more mentorships out there because there's a lot of businesses within the community, not right on the MLK corridor, but there are businesses in the community. There are great mentors in there that come out, and we like to partner them with the business here so that they can have the opportunity to assist in the growth and find locations for them.
So.
But I would say networking and marketing.
Yes, exactly. So then you don't have support, people that can do that.
We are just now getting prepared with our new website because I talked the city into, we need a website. And I just didn't have the funding or the skill. My background is law. When you talked about changing your career, I was in law for 42 years and I decided to get back into business development.
Right.
So I know my limitations, but to hire someone to come in, that's another salary.
Yeah, and that's getting more difficult by the day.
Exactly.
Well, I mean, I'm really encouraged standing here and listening to all this. I mean, I always knew you had this incredible facility, and you had a lot of pieces, but I didn't realize that the infrastructure was so well endowed. I mean, that's really fantastic. So I think we just need to think it through a little bit more from a program development standpoint, where some of your challenges are, your gaps in terms of services and things like that, and of course anything to do with the financial part of it. You know, who will be missing, what do we need to do there? But it sounds like you're even making strides in that direction too. So.
I have a question. My name's Todd. I've been on different sides of business and in business. I've been CEOs of companies and whatnot. Started businesses, they failed. Started them, they were successful, and so on. You used the word accelerator, and then you went back and said maybe it's an incubator. Those are two different structures.
Yeah.
And I've been involved in a couple of different incubators. There's a number of different really neat models out there. Is that the direction that you see this going? I mean, because I hear there's a lot of fragmentation of resources. There's a lot of people doing a lot of different things, but there's no coming together on the resources maybe. Like we got a disconnect of the skill development, skill sets, the needs, the growth. Are you talking incubator kind of concept instead of accelerator?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really good question. I think we kind of worked ourselves.
Okay, that's how I understand it, because the statistics are great. That's rear window stuff.
Right.
You know, incubator's a different beast.
Yeah, absolutely.
This, though, is the incubator. The Southwest Florida Enterprise Center has the incubator program where we bring in businesses from start. Not all of the businesses coming in, new businesses, have a business plan, as Doug said. They just have the ideas that they dream. So we start with them just like an infant and show them and guide them through a structured curriculum. And we have Dr. Peter Oskity, who is a known professor for teaching entrepreneurship. We go through a 2-year program with the participants. After that 2 years, and we are continually doing quarterly assessments to let them know where they are in their business, if they can apply that what we have given them to their businesses. And if they're not ready to move to the next cohort, they remain behind until we feel they're ready, working along with them in a practical setting. Once that 2 years is up, and we have a couple that's coming up now that basically have not, how do I put it, has not put in the investment for themselves, so therefore they have to leave. So we grow them to the end where they're ready to go and get funding to find a location, which is where we work with SBDC to find banks and different commercial properties to assist them. So yes, we are an incubator.
Yeah, and that's really foundational. I mean, accelerators, in some ways, an accelerator is the next step.
It's the next, it's the post, yes.
And they're typically, the most successful ones are privately supported, funded. And that's once we'd actually find the actual companies in these advanced sectors that you would find some support for them to take it to the next level. So we're really talking about, when we talk about, we're really talking about a business ecosystem. We're going to get rid of that term accelerator for now, an entrepreneurial business ecosystem, starting with the foundation here of the incubator facility, and then the collaboration that you talked about, making sure, I mean, it sounds like a lot of folks are already collaborating,
Yes.
but can we formalize that, particularly as we get into these discussions now in terms of program development and some of the things that we need to accomplish in the coming months and year relative to taking this sector to another level, but also all the marketing and all the other things that come into it, and then the connections that we'll be making to the private sector as part of some of the other things we're doing in terms of the target industries, to get them to know who we are and what we're trying to accomplish, and in terms of creating businesses, actual business. One thing we didn't talk about was the actual siting of businesses in the corridor, you know, in terms of space, land. I don't see a lot of that right now. I mean, I'm sure it's happened in some locations, but how do we make that move? How do we find space, affordable space, and locations that so I don't know how much of that discussion's happening, Michelle, and
We're not engaged in that process right now.
yeah. I mean, that's always a challenge, especially with land. I'm sure they're going up, right, Steve? Even, you know, everywhere. I mean, so, and lease rates, everything is, so we have to be, we'll have to talk about that too. And we don't be part of, I think, the overall program development. We want to think about it in terms of, you know, the whole process, right? Doing small business startup to, you know, making sure that they're sound and ready to go out there, and but they're going to need assistance once they get out there too.
Right.
So,
Yeah, so I think we're coming up on 11 o'clock here, so we want to be respectful of everybody's time. Appreciate you coming out. I think moving, kind of what do you see as kind of next step for you and for the group? I want to keep everybody engaged and make sure it got some good, built some momentum on this.
Really
Really good,
stuff. And
productive here.
So we have to follow through. That's always really important. We don't get this opportunity very often. We have your emails, we have your, I know some of you anyway. Can we keep this momentum going? Can we send you an email and talk about next steps and what we all need to be doing? Sharing more information probably, asking more questions, whatever it may be. Let's get this done in the next couple of weeks, next week even. I've always found that momentum is short-lived, so you really need to follow. So we'll follow through with you right away. But let's keep this going, because you know these windows of opportunity close sometimes.
If anybody has questions or just information to share,
yes,
feel free to do that with Ned or myself or whoever here, and we can share with the group.
Yeah.
So appreciate everybody coming out.
And don't forget to send the PowerPoint out to.
Yes, yes, we absolutely will. And send you some more of the slides that you can get to see.
All right, thanks everybody.
Thank you so much.
If you all can get one of these, grants on your way out.
I'll talk to them about that.
Congratulations, you have done a fabulous job. So it's a work in progress, and it's a combined effort right there. It's a combined effort. Anytime you want to do workforce development, over and learn critical skills, in return, we will give you all of the skills that they need. And I'm certified
Establishing us a CRA because we feel like
Somebody came and gave a bag anyway.
You tried to give me another one.
So we had to rebuild.
North Carolina?
Virginia. And so I was on the chamber at the time, and I worked with the mayor as a friend of mine. We did an incubator. We already had the funds before the hurricane, we got it afterwards. The incubator was really good. And then I was just up in St. Pete, and I got the incubator up there.
I went to visit there.
That is
Yes,
really
it is really, and.
And those are public-private.
Yes,
And
exactly.
we did both, and those were great.
And I visited that when I had the one at Deacon Council. Yolanda Adams, Yolanda Jackson and I, very good friends. And she found out we were doing the incubator here, and she said, Phyllis, you need to come see this. That's what we want to grow.
All the resources on the
It's right
floor, all the
Yeah.
property upstairs, and we had realtors coming and stuff. We did everything.
Okay, great, thank you.
So I definitely want to set up a meeting for you. We can do Zoom if you're not available in person. But oh, that's even better. Great. Thank you.
I just got back in April from restoring our condo, so.
Well, thank you so much. I will be in touch with you.
Okay, thanks. See you later. Thank you.
Thank you. See, for helping us here.
Hey, this is fantastic.
Yes, this is great.